Aaron Pico might be the most talented fighter to ever enter MMA. Olympic level wrestling, Golden Gloves champion, and TJ Dillashaw calling him a prodigy. And yet, in his very first fight, he got finished in under a minute. Since then, he's been KO'd whilst comfortably winning fights. He's changed teams, rebuilt his game, and now, after years of chaos, he's finally making his UFC debut. So what went wrong with Aaron Pico? Where were the holes in his game? What did he fix? Where did he evolve? And is Aaron Pico finally ready to live up to that hype and fulfill his potential? Let's break it all down. So after losing his professional debut, Pico went on a 4-fight win streak, and this definitely helped regain some of the hype. So much so that the Joe Rogan Experience actually put a fight companion on for a Bellator event. Think about that in 2025. And this was supposed to be a breakout performance from Aaron Pico in what was definitely a step up against Henry Corrales. But ultimately, it culminated in this legendary moment.
Great, but Corrales is not doing well.
Needed the body.
Dude,
He's
be
some
smart.
shots too back.
Be
though.
smart, Pico.
Now, this loss obviously told me some things about Aaron Pico's vulnerabilities, and that's where I want to start, because Pico, at least at that stage of his career, had a really bad habit of throwing himself into the fire. Now, having the ability to throw yourself into the fire is a massive strength when you're down on the scorecards, when you're losing, and you need to pull something out the bag. Think about Leon Edwards against Kamaru Usman, that legendary head kick. Sometimes you have to throw yourself into the fire, but Aaron Pico was doing this so unnecessarily. He was winning fights on the scorecards, getting reckless and getting caught. So context is extremely important here, and Aaron Pico had already badly hurt Henry Corrales in this fight, and he got himself engaged in a really 50-50 position. In fact, literally a 50-50 position. Both guys completely mirroring each other with this tie grip around the neck, both in the clinch with a free hand that they could land strikes with. And as you can see here, Aaron Pico, his left hand is completely down, leaving him very vulnerable. And Aaron Pico lands a nice uppercut. Aaron Pico tries to land a shot of his own with his arm way down here. Let's keep it playing forward. And Henry Corrales lands a massive right hand on Aaron Pico with his defense nowhere to be seen. A completely unnecessary risk from Aaron Pico, wanting to put on a show for the fans or whatever his motives were. It clearly didn't pay off. A terrible knockout to take in your 6th professional fight. Henry Corrales follows it up with another right hand and a left hook on the way down. Now, if this was just an isolated incident, you could easily put it down to youthful inexperience, Aaron Pico hurting his opponent, getting a little bit carried away. But then what we're about to see in his very next fight shows that this was more of a habit. Aaron Pico getting too much into the habit of exchanging fire with fire, throwing himself into the fire when he really didn't need to. And before we see the result of the next fight, I just want us to take a look at some corner advice that his corner gave him just before the finishing sequence.
He wants the low kicks, so he's going to start trying to get desperate and explode things like a double flying knee. Keep your eyes sharp.
And in case you missed that, Aaron Pico's corner were warning him that Adam Borics might be getting a bit desperate because Aaron Pico, again, was comfortably winning this fight, and that Borics might go for something desperate like a flying knee. This happened next. Now, was this a brilliantly timed knee by Adam Borics? Definitely. But at the same time, Aaron Pico did nothing to defend himself in this situation. No lateral movement. It reminded me of Jorge Masvidal's knockout on Ben Askren. By the way, great to see Ben Askren seems to be on the mend, which is amazing to see. But as we're about to play through these frames, Adam Borics, after Aaron Pico was warned about a desperate flying knee that might be coming his way, Adam Borics leaps into this knee. And Aaron Pico just lowers his level, tries to catch him with a takedown, doesn't set anything up, doesn't change his angles, just dips his head right into it. And look, again, is it quite unlucky for Aaron Pico? Absolutely. But the fact that his corner warned him about this just in the previous round means that it should have been something that he was preparing for, being a bit lighter on his feet, moving around. But again, Aaron Pico left himself in that firing zone, which meant that he was vulnerable. Even though he was comfortably winning the fight, it left himself vulnerable to being finished, and that meant that he was 4-3 in his first 7 fights. And let's face it, being 4-3 in your first 7 fights, when you're meant to be this unbelievable prospect, this is potentially career-ending territory here. And I do want to give some credit to Pico here, because I think that the next move moves that he made were both extremely intelligent and extremely important in his future success and some of the success that he's enjoying now. He clearly felt as though he'd gone as far as he possibly could with his current team, so he made the move over to Jackson Wink, which has trained champions such as John Jones, BJ Penn, George St. Pierre has spent time there, and not only is it an incredible training facility with some of the best trainers in the world, they also produce some of the best game plans. And if one criticism of Pico's early career was his recklessness, abandoning game plans and just fighting fire with fire, then this seemed like it could be the perfect fit. Aaron Pico clearly has all the techniques, all the tools to be a brilliant fighter, but he just wasn't implementing game plans intelligently when things got a bit hectic. His fight IQ just seemed to go out the window. So this career move at this stage of his career seemed to be a stroke of genius. And as we're about to see a clip from an interview with Aaron Pico and Luke Thomas and Brian Campbell from Morning Combat, Aaron Pico was extremely insightful, gave a lot of details about why he was struggling so early on in his career.
Like anything else, I always say, for me in the beginning, it was the speed in the cage that I was having a hard time adjusting to. Things were coming at me so fast, and I wasn't able to make the decisions right, make the right decisions, and then I ultimately have gotten caught with. So I think 2020 was a great year for me to get time in the cage. The fight is starting to slow down for me in there, and I'm excited. I'm excited about the future for us.
So the main issue that Aaron Pico was dealing with was under the bright lights, the speed of the things which were coming his way, and he was really struggling to deal with it. And this is very consistent with what we said before about his vulnerabilities, throwing himself into the fire. When things weren't going his way, when he got a bit reckless, he wasn't being intelligent, he wasn't slowing things down, he was just fighting out of instinct, and this cost him clearly in his early career. And I actually really credit Pico for being so insightful, because it's so rare that you see an MMA fighter being so vulnerable, so honest about what went wrong in his career early doors. And as soon as Aaron Pico said that he's been getting the rounds in, things are starting to slow down, you know that he's adding the necessary tools to become a real prospect in this game. Because like I said before, the guy's undoubtedly talented, but if you can't put it together in an intelligent manner in the octagon, what's the point? And it's never an easy decision changing teams. We've seen fighters almost waste careers because they've stayed with the wrong team for too long. Fighting ultimately has to be a selfish sport. You have to do what's right for you. And Aaron Pico, at 4-3, he made the right decision to move to Jackson Wink and to find a team that could unlock his potential, that could help him live up to the high expectations that had been set for him. So with that being said, let's take a look at the strengths of Aaron Pico, what made him such a formidable prospect, and what could make him a future potential UFC champion. And I want to start by taking a look at his power. As TJ Dillashaw said, the guy has one of the scariest left hooks he's ever seen.
And Pico looking very... Oh, it's over. It is all over. Just like that. The power of Aaron Pico.
Now, it'd be easy to take a look at that clip and think that Aaron Pico just possesses ungodly one-punch knockout power. And whilst that might be the case, that also does a bit of a disservice to his technical capabilities and how much he developed his striking under Jackson Wink. So I just want to take a look at this clip right now. We're going to break down exactly how Aaron Pico was able to land this absolute beautiful left hook. And it's worth bearing in mind that he had been targeting Daniel Carey's body a lot through this fight, and he used that to his advantage. As he raises that knee, throwing a fake front kick, you can see the reaction that it gets out of Daniel Carey. Both of his hands come down. That's exactly the reaction that Pico wants, as soon as that foot plants back down, you can see this arm's cocked and ready to go, and he throws an absolute textbook left hook, shoulder nice and high, full torque in his hips, so much power going through that shot, and it absolutely ices Daniel Carey. So not just a brilliant one-punch knockout power, we can rave all day about that for Aaron Pico, but the technical side of it, how cute he is with his setups, is something to behold, and it's one reason why I give him a very good chance in the UFC. Possessing one-punch knockout power in the featherweight division is a superpower. On top of that, Pico was definitely guilty of headhunting early on in his career. Knowing that you've got bombs in both hands, it's very tempting just to headhunt, go for spectacular knockouts. But his targeting also improved after moving to Jackson Wink, as you're about to see here.
Lining up, Bradley Edwards staggering with the right hands, a series of lefts and rights.
So not only a clean overhand right to force his opponent back onto his heels, but then lowering the level, shifting a devastating left hook to the body, that ultimately dropped his opponent and saw him getting finished. It showed that Aaron Pico was developing his overall game. He was no longer a headhunting, reckless fighter. He was a lot more intelligent and targeted with his striking. And look, we knew that Aaron Pico had very good boxing. You don't win these Golden Gloves tournaments as an amateur if you don't have good hands. So the problem was more putting it all together in the world of MMA. And people had correctly identified that Pico was struggling in combining the two.
And I think in this fight, what I want to see is I want to see seamless transitions from boxing to the takedown. Last time it was wrestling and then boxing. They didn't go together. But to see them and try to counter them and then open up his stuff. That was what I wanted to see right there.
Right there.
And look, just comparing this takedown to the attempt we saw on Adam Borics when he got caught by the knee, you can see how well-rounded Aaron Pico's game had become. Let's break this down frame by frame. So this is going to be super slow-mo because I'm actually breaking down the slow-mo clip, but it's important to take a look at what happens here. Remember against Adam Borics, when he came running in, Aaron Pico's hands came down. He left himself really vulnerable to that flying knee. Here against Daniel Carey, he's learnt his lessons. Those arms are outstretched. If a knee's coming through the middle, he's going to get a block on them. And importantly as well, he takes this step back, putting himself out of danger. Whilst he knows that a knee could be coming at this point, really there isn't that much room for him to get so much leverage on a knee from there. And Aaron Pico gets a beautiful entry on a double leg. Hips come nice and under Daniel Carey. And that is absolute textbook. Beautiful double leg takedown. And just a real example of the fighter that Aaron Pico was becoming at this stage of his career. No longer a reckless marauder, get himself caught in stupid positions. Instead, he was being intelligent, mixing up his extremely proficient boxing with his bread and butter, which was his wrestling. So in those few fight clips, you can clearly see the development in Aaron Pico's game. No longer was he being reckless, throwing himself into the fire. He had a lot more intelligent approach. The bond between him and Greg Jackson was clearly paying dividends. So the strengths of Aaron Pico are clear. He's got formidable boxing and elite level wrestling. And now that he's able to put it all together, he's going to be a problem for anyone. However, I now need to bring things slightly back down to earth when I speak about the level of competition that he's faced, especially when you compare that with his next opponent, Lerone Murphy. Now, Lerone Murphy is coming off back-to-back wins against Dan Ige and Josh Emmett. These are two perennial top 10 featherweights in the UFC. Whereas when you look at Aaron Pico's record, there are some good names on there, but let's face it, most of them don't have Wikipedia pages. And whilst this might not be the most reliable metric of level of competition faced by a fighter, it definitely tells you something. And the harsh reality is that Lerone Murphy represents a huge step up for Aaron Pico, and it's a very tricky fighter to fight against in your UFC debut. One thing that I think does work in Aaron Pico's favour is how sensible a fighter Lerone Murphy is. He often gets accused of being boring, particularly in that fight against Josh Emmett, which is understandable because we know that Josh Emmett carries massive power. Lerone Murphy wanted no part of that. He showed a lot of lateral movement, a point-scoring approach, you could almost argue, and this could actually work out in Aaron Pico's favour, because if he is slightly daunted by the bright lights of the UFC and he reverts back to type in those first 6 fights where he just throws himself into the fire, then Lerone Murphy isn't a fighter who will really allow you to do that, because if you move forward swinging, he's most likely just going to move out the way. So in reality, it seems as though this fight's going to be more of a chess match. Whose game plan will come off best? Lerone Murphy will be preparing for a massive power, a fighter who's good at mixing up the wrestling and the striking, and Aaron Pico needs to be prepared to adapt to what's put in front of him by Murphy. Whilst I can't see Lerone Murphy attempting takedowns on Aaron Pico, his striking is extremely technical. I can see him blitzing in with combinations and then getting himself out of the way of the counter. So Aaron Pico needs to make sure that he's timing the entries by Lerone Murphy, catching him on his way in and setting up his own game plan, getting Lerone Murphy's back against the fence and then unloading those bombs. And despite Lerone Murphy representing a huge step up in competition for Aaron Pico, he is training at Jackson Wink. He's been sparring elite level competition for years and years now. We know that Aaron Pico's got a formidable reputation as a sparring partner. It's now about translating that onto the biggest stage in the world, which is the UFC, and a co-main event underneath a huge middleweight title fight. And the stakes couldn't be higher, because if Aaron Pico does win this fight, he's giving himself a legitimate claim to a title shot. Let's face it, the featherweight division is a bit of a mess at the moment after Volkanovski regained his title. Now that Movsar Evloev pulled out of this fight due to injury, he goes to the back of the queue. That's just the way that this works. So all of this ultimately leads to the question of, Is Aaron Pico finally ready to live up to that hype, fulfill his potential? And I guess we are going to find out next weekend. One question mark that you might have regarding his mindset and mentality may have been answered in his very last fight. Because when I think about Aaron Pico heading into the UFC, I do question whether or not the demons that haunted him early on in his career could come back to play. Might the moment get to him? Could we see another Henry Corrales moment? However, his final fight in Bellator/PFL was against Henry Corrales. He avenged that loss. On paper, this win for Aaron Pico didn't mean all that much, as in the meantime between their two fights, Henry Corrales had racked up a lot of losses on the way. But in terms of his mindset, what this did for his mentality, believing in himself, this ticked a huge box. I think this is the best fight that Aaron Pico could have had. Forget the level of competition. For his own mindset, this is the best fight Aaron Pico could have had heading into the UFC. He told himself that he really is that guy. That first Henry Corrales fight was just a hiccup. He went back, did the job, and now he's ready for the big time. When you look back at Aaron Pico's early career and those losses, you can put it down to a combination of things. Having that reckless abandon of youth, getting himself involved in firefights, and possibly believing in his own hype, thinking that he could just go out and blitz these guys, and he ultimately paid the price for that. However, now I'm seeing a completely transformed fighter, a very intelligent fighter, somebody who has seamless transitions between his striking and his wrestling, and possesses knockout power. Let me re-emphasize the point, having knockout power in the featherweight division is a superpower. So few fighters in that division possess the one-punch knockout power that can just turn a fight on its head. We saw Lerone Murphy getting dropped against Dan Ige in their fight. If Aaron Pico lands on you, you might not get back up. So this has been a breakdown of the career of Aaron Pico. We've taken a look at the vulnerabilities early on in his career, examined the strengths that made him such a formidable prospect, and taking a quick look about how he's going to fare next weekend against Lerone Murphy. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have done, please do subscribe to the channel. Comment below what you think Aaron Pico's prospects are in the UFC, and I'll see you in the next one.